Ghostface makes the move from the small California town of Woodsboro to New York City when the characters from Scream 5 decide to go to college across the country. I was a bit too young to be in the first wave of theater goers to be blown away by Halloween, Friday the 13th, or A Nightmare on Elm Street, but I was at the perfect age for Scream. It was for kids a little bit older than me, so I felt extra grown up watching it. Scream was such a smash hit that everyone knew that there would be sequels, but the original story was so well conceived and tied up all of the loose ends that a sequel seemed like it wouldn't work. Now, almost 30 years later, Scream is still pushing boundaries and staying fresh, while somehow keeping the exact same formula of that original film. The writers go in hard with each sequel, and I assume they always think it's going to be the last movie in the franchise. When a new sequel is announced, they have to find a way to twist the story and relationships to justify a new killer with a new motive to keep attacking the same people again, and somehow they always pull it off. I have always loved the cold opens in Scream. The first film, we get to see Drew Barrymore making popcorn talking to the killer on the phone, and it's the first time we hear the classic line, "What's your favorite scary movie?" And in every sequel, that opening scene is the same, and yet they somehow keep making it fresh. There was a pretty big surprise in Scream 6 that featured a phone call, like always, but it also involved dating app culture, and has a couple of very unexpected twists. And for the sixth time, we have a cold open that has all the same beats, but somehow is still exciting and original. Scream 6 keeps our two leads from Scream 5 and the supporting cast who survived that film. I really like Jenna Ortega as Tara and Melissa Barrera as Sam. In fact, they may be my favorite leads across all 6 of the Scream films. Now, the rest of the cast is also very likable, and for the first time, we aren't in the small town of Woodsboro, we were in New York City. It took Jason Voorhees 8 movies to leave Camp Crystal Lake and make it to New York, and I was happy to have a reference to that film in this 6th installment of Scream. Even though there are now only passing mentions to the original characters, this still feels like a continuation of that story, which I find very impressive. Every Scream movie has this meta scene where there's a film nerd explaining the killer's motivations through horror movie plot lines. Throughout the Scream movies, we have learned how killers think in horror films, horror sequels, and trilogies, and reboot sequels, and finally in Scream 6, we get another explanation for films that have stood the test of time. I always look forward to this scene, and I'm always impressed by the nods to past horror films mixed with current cultural trends. While it is a cliche scene, it is always so well written, almost like a George Carlin comedy bit that is just full of wordplay. In fact, the scene in Scream 6 is broken up into 2 parts. The second half, which is really just a single line of dialogue, is not seen until the post-credit scene, and it actually did make me laugh. The kills are very brutal in this movie. So many people get stabbed, and sometimes stabbing isn't enough. Sometimes that knife needs to be twisted after it's stabbed. The gunshots and shotgun blast hit hard, and there's even a scene where someone gets a cherry Coke thrown on them. Now, of course, no matter how many times someone is stabbed or shot, there's a 50% chance that in the next scene, they'll be up running for their life as if they weren't injured at all. And the scenes leading up to the kills are also super tense in Scream 6. This film definitely has the most gruesome deaths in the entire franchise. The plot is easy to follow, even if some of the big reveals kind of hit with a thud, and you almost need a map like Charlie had in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia to keep all the relationships straight. And of course, the final act in every Scream film has the killer revealing themselves, and much like the villains in a James Bond movie, they tell the heroes their entire plan before being stopped from completing said plan. The motivation of the killer doesn't always work, and in Scream 6, it almost feels like the motivation and the anger of the killer is a bit unfounded and unbelievable. Now, every character has a motivation to be the killer, and you will be suspecting everyone right up until the time that they get killed. I can't really rank all of the Scream films accurately because I need to watch them all back to back to refresh my memory, but I can say I did enjoy Scream 6 more than Scream 5, and it's in the top half of films in the franchise. While none of the movies for me have been a home run since that original film, and the story continues to get more and more convoluted, I think more so than any of the other big slasher franchises, the quality of the Scream films is the most consistent. Being shocked with your sister. Peeking out the window, pointing a gun while talking on the phone, riding the subway, slashing your way through New York City.